stars of animation are shining. It's time to stay tuned. And now, here's your host, Phil Mackey.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Stay Tuned Live, an all-new live stream talk show presented by Streaming the Magic right here on Facebook. My name is Phil Mackey, and I'm an animator, cartoonist, and former Disney cast member, and it is my pleasure to be your host each week as we deep dive into the world of animated films. Before the show starts tonight, I'd like to first of all say thank you again for being here on Streaming the Magic. Thanks so much. And if you're interested in telling everybody about this great show, please feel free to share this show with anyone and tag them and all that good stuff. So thank you for spreading the word out there. I genuinely appreciate it. And I also want to let you know there's a way that you can connect with other fans of this show, and you can tap into the latest news from the animation world. It's the Stay Tuned community page, and you can be a part of it right now by simply going to facebook.com/groups/Stay Tuners. Okay, so as you know, animation is all about timing. And it's oh so appropriate then that my Emmy-winning special guest tonight has made a career as a timing director. He's also a man with an incredible first name, Phil Cummings. Phil, not this Phil, but the other Phil, is here to talk about the multitude of animated series he's been a part of over the years, and to get a closer look into the importance of a timing director. So, ladies and gentlemen, Phil Cummings. Applause.
Just in case I'm the only one, you know.
Well, I need to have an applause button. I need to have some sort of a applause track. There's got to be.
Really?
That'd be really helpful, I think, or maybe just to make it
would just be fun. It would be, you know, you could like have like buttons that said like laugh and applause, and
I would. That would be great. That would be great, and maybe even a few like fart buttons and all those kinds of things.
Who used to do that? Somebody used to do that.
Art Simpson used to do that.
No. Somebody had a show where they actually did like their own sound effects. They would add like they would do the track, but I forget who.
I heard a chime sound effect. That was impressive.
Oh, I should I like leave and go like close the door so you can't?
No, I don't.
That's going to go off.
I just thought it was very appropriate. We were talking about sound effects, and then there was a sound effect that happened. I thought that was good. So anyway, welcome, Phil. Welcome to Stay Tuned Live. How are you?
Glad to be here.
Thank you. I'm glad to have you.
So.
When I think about timing in relation to a cartoon, it sparks a lot of things in my mind. I think about dialogue. I think about music. I think about episode length. But is there a succinct way to sum up the job itself?
Yeah, it's acting. And it would be like being an assistant director on a live action set. Where I say, okay, when he drops the plate, you walk through and you take slow steps, and then you tell the guy that he drops the plate when you're nailing down everything that happens in the shot, exactly when it happens, and trying to coordinate it and make it work with anything else that's going on, like the background action, the music, anything that there is that involves time, the camera zooming in, the background panning, all of it is that.
Are there people are there timing underlings? Or is it just the timing director and there's nobody else?
The timing director, I mean, I hate to say this, the timing director is the underling. The supervising director is telling you this is what I want, and it's the job has like super changed. Susan, could you close the door, please? The job has changed from film to digital, as everybody's job has changed from film to digital. It used to get 3 storyboard panels for a scene that kind of like where it starts, the key action, and where it ends up. And you did something that was called slugging, because they didn't even know how, they would board it. They would do the script, record the track, board it, and then turn it over to people to slug to see how long each scene was actually going to take, how long it took for the action in each scene to play out.
What slugging means to break it down to its phases?
Slug in film meant that you would slug it. You would say this scene is 3 feet 8 frames, and add all the scenes up, and the editor, once that was approved, once they made it the correct length, the editor would take blank film and create a slug reel. And
you're measuring that in feet, you said? You're measuring animation in feet?
Yeah, there's 24 frames per second, 16 frames per foot. It's the old 32.
Did you know there was going to be math involved tonight, Phil? Because that was not part of my plan.
Math is really part of it. It's the old format. Got it, 16 millimeter and 35 millimeters. This is like old age attacking me. In 35 millimeter film, which set all the standards for what we do, it's 24 frames per foot, or 16 frames per foot, 24 frames a second. You're basically the timing. They would create a slug reel of blank slug, and as the scenes came in film, they would replace the slug with film.
Aha, okay.
They called it slugging, and a lot of times you would get dialogue and the storyboard and come up with a rough slug, which would tell them, were they short, were they long, what did they have to do to kind of make, in those days, you were locked into your 22 minutes. I mean, whatever the network told you to come up with, that was it. That was your time.
Basically, it's a series of placeholders, and then as work gets further completed,
it would get put in. But also, they had to, you recorded the dialogue off the script, and then you had the timer slugging it,
right?
And if it was like 26 minutes, somebody had to get rid of that 4 minutes. If it was 18 minutes, somebody had to come up with the other 4 minutes, So that was a part of it. That got replaced when they realized they could do quick times. In the director and the little QuickTime guy could sit in post and put the QuickTime together, and they would slug it. They will. I mean, now that's what happens now. They slug it now, and you get the show to length. It used to be you could add and subtract and all that kind of stuff. Now you're basically locked into the time for each scene. If you have a problem, you have to go to the director and say, this is impossible.
But I imagine with streaming service, I imagine it's serious cable now.
Wait, the sound dropped out. I didn't hear the question.
I was saying I imagine now that we're doing the streaming services thing instead of direct to TV, maybe there's a little bit more give now, or are they still?
Absolutely. Oh yeah, but basically you really are locked in to change the time of scenes on the screen is you can't just say let's do that, let's see what they come up with. Okay. Everything is so much more bureaucratized.
Oh, that's good to know.
It's a lot more exact now.
Okay.
In analog film, it was a lot more hit and miss. They were willing to. There was some play.
Was this a job that you set out to do? I mean, was it man, I can't wait till be a timing director one day, or is it something that you kind of fell into along the way?
I started out in TV.
Okay.
As first as a painter, then as an assistant, and then as an animator, and then I started, when I got into effects, I kind of got into commercials and rock videos and all that kind of stuff, and features. I was on the feature crew of Fern Gully. I don't know if you.
Yeah, I'm very good with Fern Gully. Yeah.
Yeah. And a friend of mine was the lead assistant animator, the last assistant job I did, remember the little DNA molecules in Jurassic Park?
Yes, you're talking to the biggest Jurassic Park fan there is.
Okay, well, me and I think 2 other assistants assisted. Who animated it? Anyway, the one of the animators said, like, you know what, man, don't go back to features. Features are like, there are not going to be any more feature crews. Computers are gonna like screw that completely. So
are you telling me you animated Mr. DNA? Is that what you're telling me?
Something like that, yeah.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
And the dinosaurs it turned into. I did the in-betweens. I did the assistant work. I didn't animate it.
Okay.
And he said, like, there is no future in features. They're all going to be computers. You'll be screwed. But I'm going over to Rocco.
But that was 1992.
Yeah.
So there were features that came out after that. Were they just saying, just be prepared, it's gonna be phasing out kind of thing?
Yeah. The last feature I worked on was Cool World.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and again, I mean, I was doing effects, and I loved doing effects. I really did love doing effects. But it just seemed like once I started doing timing, it was the job of I found my true love.
What about it spoke to you?
That you were acting, that you had a lot of the whole putting together of the time of the film. It's really satisfying when it finally works, when you see something that you've done, that it's more satisfying than anything. I don't know.
I imagine it feels like clicking something into place, into a notch, and then right there. Yeah.
And again, you have, I mean, frame by frame, you're acting. It is acting. And that really is. It's fun.
But the timing director is the animator the actor, or is the timing director the actor, or is everybody the actor?
The timing director is basically keying the animators to telling them exactly, because they need to know if there's a lot of stuff going on in a scene.
Yeah.
They don't have time to sit back and listen to where the accents are, to where, you know, things have to come together on a certain frame.
Right.
And, you know, if there's a lot of stuff going on, interactions, things moving in the background, all that kind of stuff. Where's the camera move? You know, all that kind of stuff has to be figured out. And it all has to work together. There's you know, so you're kind of providing the skeleton of a scene.
Okay.
So
yeah, I want to mention real quickly, because you've worked on some of my favorite series out there, but I kind of wanted to start by talking a little bit about Adventure Time, because Adventure Time, when it came out, it was such a groundbreaking show,
it's weird. I had no idea. My friend Don Judge said, I need you to help me work on. Do you want to pick up some freelance on the show called Adventure Time? I was like, fine, okay. And I'm working on it. My daughter comes in and goes, well, what are you working on? And I said, some show called Adventure Time. Have you ever heard of it? She goes, my cat's named Finnegan. And, you know, I was digging it. I liked it. I think that was like the first episode that I worked on. And I got more and more into it because it had a whole bunch of stuff that was not in most shows.
No, the combination of elements was really weird. How conversational the characters would speak, but at the same time, there was all this phraseology that was unique to the show. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. There was a lot that was unique to the show. I think that I mean, they had some really amazing writers. Penn, who I never knew. I think I shook his hand once. You know, it was just one of those unique ideas, but it also had a kind of cinematically, it was different. The cuts are much longer than most.
They are. But
And-
that's kind of harkening back to like older stuff, wouldn't you say?
Yes, but in a way that that was unique to itself, and also the concepts. I mean, the whole kind of, it's so what's the word? It's not, the basic TV show, the basic film is still a Greek play. You're the audience. You're sitting in the theater watching people work things out on stage, and Adventure Time is so not that. The point of view of each scene is kind of different than that. I mean, yeah, it has to preserve that, but no, it's a really unique show. I mean, I was a schlepper on that one. Don is really exacting, and you would sit down for 300 feet, which is not really that much footage,
right?
With like 4 pages of notes. He knew exactly what he was looking for.
Was that before or after things started changing, transitioning in this digital age? Like, was that
way after?
After?
Yeah. I mean, Adventure Time was just a few years ago. Things really started to change at the end of the 90s.
Okay, so what sort of ways did your job change then at the end of the 90s, going from the old way to doing it the new way?
Oh, that's a good question. It started changing in first that there was no slugging. Second, that the cuts are shorter. I don't know. I mean, I can't. It's hard. There, you started getting like once they started doing storyboards in Storyboard Pro and not drawing them, you started getting a lot more panels, and that really that changed everything. Really, for timing, the main thing was that all of a sudden you're getting, instead of 3 panels in a scene, you're getting 30.
Oh, okay.
To where now there's a point where a lot of shows are dropping timing.
They're doing less animation now.
Well, the timing, if there's a panel every 12 frames and more sometimes, and it's all cut in QuickTime, you hardly even need animators anymore. Because it really, there's not a huge amount of leeway. I mean, what am I timing? I was just on a show where they were talking about like, oh, you missed something by 2 frames. It's like, wow, okay, 1/12 of a second off. I mean, gulp,
And that'll make enough of a difference, would you say?
Just between you and me, no.
Yep, no one else is paying attention right now. Just you and me.
I used to when they first started giving us, it used to be they would give you a storyboard and an audio tape that you put in your little audio tape player to listen for the accents and the acting, and then they started giving us like VHS. Whoa, so cool, on like Duckman. And I would go home and put in Duckman, and all it was the storyboard panels with the dialogue played over it. And my kids would go like, how come this isn't in color? They didn't see that the lips weren't in sync. They didn't see any of it. All that they saw was the show.
Okay.
And if the weird thing about streaming now is a lot of times it goes out of sync, and it bugs me. If things are 4 frames out of sync, it makes me nuts, and people don't see it.
Why do you think that's happening? It has to do with the technology or something else?
That has to do with the audio and the video being on different aspects of the stream.
You're saying that when they're finishing the cartoon at the studio, it's fine over there, but when we're getting it at home, that's where it's falling out of sync?
Yeah, it falls out of sync more often on regular TV, but there's a lot of times where you're looking at something and you just think, oh, this is out of sight.
I have wondered that a lot. I've actually wondered, like, how did someone not catch this? But that you're making me think that maybe they did catch it. It's just the way
They did catch it. It's not. It's think of how many different places it has to go before it gets to your house.
So if you play something on a DVD, that's going to be a more accurate representation of.
Oh, absolutely. There's no way that if that's how to sync your DVD player is broken.
Okay. Yeah. So that makes a lot of sense. Let's talk a little bit about Invader Zim, actually, and maybe how that was a little bit different, if at all, for you. We'll throw that.
Again, that was. I mean, they're all different. The good ones are different. The bad ones are different. Zim, he had a really clear idea of where he wanted to go. And of how that, I mean, on this one, they wanted fast acting. They wanted the, I mean, look at these scenes that we're looking at now.
Yeah.
Actions are really snappy. They're really fast. They're, bam, that just happened in 6 frames. That was.
The dialogue is very, very.
Yeah. Whereas Adventure Time, if you think of the clips you just showed, that was all very fluid and languid. And here, like, zip. The camera moves are real quick. Everything is pretty snappy and fast, and that's what he wanted. That was why he did that for a certain effect, and it worked. I mean, on that show, it absolutely worked. As a matter of fact, if this is what
episode is this? Oh, this is Tack, the Hideous New Girl.
I might have actually worked on this one. I only worked one season on this.
This was towards the end, I believe. This is episode 20.
Yeah.
But so when there's a show that's being how do I phrase this? So when a showrunner is trying to communicate to everybody, because I imagine like the pacing is coming from the top down, right? Like the decision of how the show will be paced.
Basically, yeah.
So I mean, is there a lot of hey, it's going to be like this old standard, or is it more like no, you're gonna know what it's like after episode 1, and then from there on, that's going to be the gold standard for the rest of the series?
By the time it gets into timing, there's a timing supervisor who's basically who you've worked with usually on a whole bunch of shows that knows exactly what to tell you, and then you start putting it down on the sheets. And the sheets, I mean, I don't know if people actually know what sheets look like on me.
You have some sheets?
Yeah.
Oh, let's see some sheets.
Here's an exposure sheet. And it's basically like a bar sheet in music.
Yes. There's
24 frames. That's 1 second. 3 of those little bars are 24 frames. One foot is 16. There's 2 of them. The entire sheet is 5 feet. If I can stop going back and forth, the entire sheet is 5 feet. So you time it and you turn it in. And the timing supervisor and the director and all that look at it and go like, no, I don't like what you're doing. Or yes, this got exactly, it's like you're in a band, right? And you're playing the clarinet or something like that. It all has to kind of be in sync with the rest of the team, with the feel of the show, and catch what they want each scene to say. And so, and with saying that, there's people who are frame positive. They want certain things to be happening at exactly the right time, and they have it in their mind. Then there are people who want a lot of input. You say, like, wouldn't it be better if he did this at this time? Or I saw the accent being this word. And I mean, there's all kinds of different stuff, In some shows, if you add thumbnail poses that aren't on the board, they think, perfect, great. If you do that on other shows, you'll get fired because they do not want you, improvising and adding stuff. They have it in their minds exactly what they want to tell the animators to do. And as a lot of the people now have never been animators and certainly never been assistants, and certainly have never worked on footage, which is what all the Asian studios do. You get paid by the foot, not by the hour. And when you get like these incredibly complex Baroque exposure sheets, you know what they're doing. They're turning the storyboard into layouts, and they're sitting the layouts down, and they're going, I got to pay my rent this week. Let's make this work. And usually simplifying things, by the way, is usually better. They're like, how can we make this work and I still make $10 an hour?
So you're saying they pad out a scene as far as how many drawings are happening so that they can get paid more?
No, the opposite.
Yeah.
When you're sitting there, they used to call it pencil mileage. The less pencil mileage you do, the more money you make. And you can see some of the scenes where after it's come back, when you're watching it in color, where you think like, yeah, they did not follow the ridiculous things they were told to do. Because they're
cutting corners.
They're simplifying. That's not cutting corners. Simplifying is making something work with the least amount of effort.
Let's give an example. So let's say a character is supposed to jump from point A to point B, but in between the jump, he's supposed to do like a 3/4 turn spiral. Are you saying they'll make it a 1 spiral?
It depends on what medium they're working in. Because if you're twirling,
mm-hmm.
in After Effects, you just set a rotation.
Yeah.
And, all you have to do is 5 drawings for that scene for what you just did.
Right.
There's the antic, popping up, twirling, and landing. Not 5 drawings, but a few drawings.
At least 7 to 8, probably about that.
Right. And, we used to do it when we were working on Scooby in the 70s, where you would get, there was one animator named Ed Love who did the most beautiful stuff. The guy was, worked at Disney. He was like, and they used to give his work. They would say, I'm giving you 25 feet of Eds and 200 feet of eye blinks. So, I remember one scene where it was Justice League, where an octopus had all 8 of them and was swinging them around, right?
Sure.
And you think like, shit, this scene pays $100. It's going to take me 3 days. Nobody wants to work for 3 days on something that pays $100, And so I made little cycles where they kind of went up and down and their little arms waved. I made it like into a 16 drawing cycle, overlapping the cycles and all that. It went straight through. It worked, but it wasn't. If I had been on staff, at Disney and expected to do 10 drawings a day, I would have made that look beautiful, but you can't. And I don't think a lot of these kind of people that have gone through college and have never sat at a desk drawing understand the mentality of doing that. And that is actually a problem.
They don't understand the mentality of the logistics of once you're like doing it for hire, how that changes things, you mean?
Exactly.
So was that a goal? Was going to Disney, since you mentioned the differences between the studios, was going there a goal for you at one point?
Disney was always a step down. If you were an animator, you became an assistant animator, and a pay cut. And one of one of the things that, and also with Disney, unless you started out at Disney and unless they pegged you as being one of the, the Glenn Keanes or the Andreas, what's his face, unless you were like one of the rock star animators, Wolf, people like that, Larry White, you were basically going to get a job and stay there. And because I was an excellent effects assistant, and they were rarer than hen's teeth, there were a lot more good effects animators than effects assistants. And that would have pigeonholed me. I would have been there for 30 years. And then got dumped when they dumped the entire feature unit.
Yeah.
I would have been dumped with them. So
probably a good thing you went the path that you did.
Well, I mean, for doing effects,
yeah,
you could do it for Disney for your salary, or and you would be competing with the greats, with Mauro Maressa and Jeff Howard for the scenes, right? Who are they going to give the bitchin' scenes for? The scenes where, Pinocchio, the Monstro the whale coming out of the water, which was Odell, by the way. Who are they going to get that to? Meanwhile, you could make triple the money. I told you I did a lot of the ground shadows in All Dogs Go to Heaven.
Yes.
I made a deal with the guy to do at $7 a drawing.
But people don't realize the ground shadows, that was just like, that's just a thing that you like, that was focused on by you. That wasn't right. So if you watch All Dogs Go to Heaven and you look at the shadows that are happening from characters on the ground, that's you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But you can't I'm not going to hang that on my wall with, and say like, I did this,
Not unless you want to put it next to Peter Pan having his shadow tied back onto his foot, they could.
Well, and I worked a lot the animation industry is very cyclical, and there's times when it just would lay down and die. And in the old days of analog, I would drive down into Hollywood and just do live action special effects. And a lot of that was just holdout mats, traveling mats, fixing scenes that they had screwed up. If they saw your work, you did it wrong. And but fun.
It kind of makes the animator a bit of it's a thankless job in that sense, in the term that if people are aware of you, then you're doing it wrong.
Right. But that a lot of really satisfying, interesting stuff.
Well, that's cool. Well, let's go back in time a little bit to we're gonna talk a little bit about Klasky Csupo. Klasky Csupo, of course, the guys who provided us with shows like Real Monsters and Rugrats and Duckman. Duckman's a great one. But how was working for them? Because they were a pretty progressive studio, a little bit different than the other ones, weren't they?
You know what? They're your dysfunctional family. You love them, and you think they're all nuts. But a lot of times with timing, you're working at home, and I loved them when I worked at home. They would just hand me the animatic and the sheets and the board, and you could go to town. And if you added stuff, they would go like, "Thank you, oh, that's so great." And
they wanted you to add things. That's interesting.
Yeah. Oh, well, and Gabor he's an artist.
Yeah.
He was not a suit. Gabor really, and he had all these Eastern Europeans, some of whom were completely mad, were absolutely insane, including Igor Kovalyev, who is the creator of Real Monsters. And he went to Gabor and said, "I want to do the show." Thought of it. It was his idea. And that happened a lot there, where people would have ideas and say to Gabor, "Oh, I want to do this." And Gabor would go, "Great. If it doesn't work, I'll be pissed." But, Gabor was one of the best people I ever worked for. I have nothing to praise for him.
What was this show? What can you tell us about what memories you have from working on Real Monsters, if there's anything that stands out?
I think going in and talking to Igor and having Igor explain what he was thinking about. When you're It would be like if you worked on the Empire State Building and somebody said, well, I know you did the wall in this office. What, you're part of a team. And I don't know. And it was 30 years ago and I'm super old, but
you're like pushing 35 right now, aren't you? So don't worry about that.
Well, I don't know. My Botox guy won't come out because of the virus, but so I got all my waddles. It was just fun, and there was like this little group of people, me and Julie Murphy and Mike Lyman and Don Judge and one or two others, and we just did the show. It was so cool. It was like, what part do you have? Oh, I've got that. This is cool. It was just, you're doing the little tiny details. It would be like Van Gogh talking about his brush strokes. You're a lot of times you don't see the forest for the trees because it's so you're doing frames and the show is being shown at speed.
Right.
You don't actually see the show beyond looking at the animatic for months.
How important was the show Bible for you? Was that something that you would refer to regularly, or in the timing director role, was that not really something that came up a lot?
Less of a show Bible, more of interaction between timers.
Oh, okay.
How many
timers were there?
What?
How many timers were there?
There were, like I said, there was Don, Julie, me, Mike.
I mean, like in general. So like would it change?
There's the different shows have different numbers, but
okay.
Like on Paradise PD, which I just did a season of, there was just 3 of us.
That's the newer Netflix show, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that was heaven. We were working in Harmony.
Okay.
And we were getting the animatic, and we could actually add moves and add anything we wanted, and then just go in and talk to whoever that was directing the show and say, like, look, I did this. I thought he should do that. And they generally would say, like, yeah, cool. And that's what you want. That is what you want. You want to like plus things as much as you can. There are other shows where they just say, do it. It's locked in. You're telling the animators when they have to hit the right beat, and that's it. That's your job. Less fun usually pays more.
Less fun pays more. Why is that?
Because those really tightly controlled shows are usually done by the network, by people who care exactly about what, who are really maniacal about what they want. There's no play. They're not there to have fun.
It sounds no, we're working on cartoons, darn it. We don't want to have fun. It sounds like you've met some pretty quirky personalities and showrunners, I would imagine, over the years. Is that a fair?
Yeah. I mean, that's what this business is. It used to be and still is. I mean, it attracts people who have spent a lifetime on some of these projects inside their own heads, and they,
Sure.
Invader
Zim is probably very much that way, I imagine, because I know I've read about Jonan and how that's a lot of, like, he pulled a lot of that from his own personality.
Absolutely. But I actually, the timing department, Nick put us in our own little thing, and it was Steve Russell who was the supervising director. I think I might have said hi to Jonan once or twice. I have no read on him as a person, but Steve Russell, who was also like pretty much borderline psychotic, he was a great match for that show. He was excellent for that show.
The show is psychotic itself, yeah.
But yeah, exactly. You want crazy people to work on Invader Zim. I mean, you don't want people that are like,
right. Yeah, the show doesn't work when it's timid. That's very true.
Yeah.
When you're in, like, now that you're in the zone and you've been in the industry enough years, how does it apply for a job I mean, do you get called and they say we're looking for someone and you're one of 5 people, or is it you have to put your name in a hat kind of a thing?
There's so few of us.
Okay.
That you're generally asked to be on a show. I am actually every so often you have to look for work, but you're looking for work from people who know you. I just contacted Jen Coyle, who I knew from Harley Quinn and about a dozen other shows, and said, if something comes up, give me some work. I mean, I have like 8 or 10 people that I just kind of say, and she'll be, well, I don't know. I mean, now there is no lunchroom now, right? There's no everybody's not like working in the studio, but people talk and they say like, oh shit, I need a timer. And a few names come up, or the people you want to be the bestest friends with are checkers.
Okay, why is that?
Well, because they know who gives them the least amount of trouble. And this is also, it's an industry. You're creating a product. You're working on a deadline. You're working on a budget. And you're also organizing something, as much as it's acting, it's art and all that, but it's also, you're organizing, everything has to work together. You're doing the blueprint, and the less they erase, the less they have to go into the supervising director's office and go like, what is this? Checkers will kill you or be your best friend. They're the ones that are getting your work, and they have to ship it. Usually, I've always been on the end of the line. Like with effects, they would finish animating the show, and then they'd say, "Oh, okay, now we're going to do the effects," because you can't do the effects unless you have the animation. And that's like 3 days before the deadline. You get, I mean, with Dale Bear, we were doing effects on shows that they were down in Hollywood comping, and they would run it through, they called it a ProStar. They would shoot it and run it through the ProStar and ship the film down with a motorcycle messenger while they were comping it. That's usually effects was like right on the edge of the deadline. Same with timing. The only other step before they ship it is checking. And so the checkers usually have a really short amount of time, and if they start getting problems, they don't want to deal with people who give them problems. And the same with directors. I had one director say, if you don't see me for the whole season, if I don't hear your name one time, I love you. You're my favorite person. If I hear your name every day, I hate your guts. And that's not just timing. That's a lot of jobs where.
What do you? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's all right.
I was going to say, what do you between timing to music, timing things for dialogue? Is there one that's more enjoyable for you?
No. It depends on the show. It depends on what's going on. It depends on what they want. It depends on whether I'm on their wavelength. When you're working with people that love your work, it's always fun. When you're working with people that are asking questions about like, why, what, no, it's a nightmare. It can be, this can be the funnest job ever, or it can give you a heart attack. And all of animation is like that.
How often would you say, like, let's pick one episode of something, let's say Harley Quinn, because you've worked on that as well. how many times will you watch one episode before you're all done with it?
Usually there's a production meeting. With Harley Quinn, there was a production meeting because they had the two supervising directors who were both excellent. And so they would have maybe the six of us in for a production meeting. And they were like really, Cece and, man, it's bad. They would have us in. Jen Coyle was the supervisor. They would have us all in for a meeting, and we would watch the animatic without anybody saying anything. And then we would go back, and they would tell you what your section of it was, what your piece of it was, and you could discuss, like in this. Okay, those things in the background, are their wings going to flap? You would ask very, very specific questions about the scene, down to like the frame. What do you want? How do you want to deal with this? And after the first meeting, after you watched it once, after you watched the animatic once, it's not that common to see anything but your section. You really are. It's a forest and trees thing. You're working on the trees.
Okay.
And there's a lot of little details like in that, like where she just looked down. Where do you want that to happen? She was saying something and she looks down and, down. How do you want those do you want the tears to like stay on the edge of your eyelids or trickle down or run down fast? I mean, the detail is infinite.
Yeah.
Which I loved the character in the book. The detail is infinite. You're looking at stuff that you're not going to be seeing when you're sitting back and watching the show, but they're going to be seeing it. They want the whole thing. It all has to match. It all has to be the show.
That's right. Yeah. Do you get a sense before a show is released that it's going to be, oh man, I can tell this is going to hit with people really well? Or I mean, how fine-tuned have your predictions of success been over the years, I guess is what I'm asking you.
Sometimes you look at something and just go, this is fabulous.
Yeah.
There is no way this is not going to be, but I've been horribly wrong. I've loved stuff that didn't fly and hated stuff. I mean, there's Scooby. It's a guy in a suit, okay? Pretending to be a monster
right.
for 50 years. The first thing I ever worked on was Scooby and the Harlem Globetrotters, painting the cells, and then until Mike Lyman died. He was the timing supervisor on the new Scoobies. So that was last year. And in that 50 years, I've spent lots of time working on Scooby, never understanding what it is that people loved about that, but getting feedback from regular people. One time when I was done, it was animation because I had a pack of model sheets. No, it was the ones that Chuck Sheets did around in 2000, and I had the pack of model sheets. And my son was going with a woman who was one of those one-on-one aides to an autistic kid. And I said, and she goes, he loves Scooby, he loves Scooby. So I said, well, here's the model sheets. Give him the model sheets. He can color them in or whatever. And she gave him the model sheets and he cried.
Oh.
Yeah. Scooby has the most magic connection with its audience. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah.
If I meet people who aren't in animation, that's one of the things I bring up because they go, Scooby.
But I'm with you, Phil. I've never understood the appeal, especially when you consider how many cat clones that Hanna-Barbera turned out of the same formula, whether it be Jabberjaw or the Funky Phantom or the Buggy, whatever his name was. But they were all doing mysteries. They're all a group of teenagers with one wacky character sidekick, and I don't know why that formula worked with Scooby, but you're right. It's
accessible.
Yeah,
the characters are fun.
Yeah,
you know, that you get to know people. I mean, that nobody's, you know, I mean, nobody's really got the formula that works, that catches people, that gets people to say, I have a connection with you. I mean, that's what TV is, isn't it?
Sure.
And nobody's got it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. And you know, I mean, the same people working the same way, and one show's a hit and the other show is
And some shows get a pilot made and a few episodes, but never air any of it. And other ones, I don't understand. That's the part that still befuddles me.
Well, one producer that I worked with, basically on rock videos, but also on the Michael Jackson Moonwalker feature. He had in his office Freud's comedy and its relationship to the subconscious. And while I was sitting there waiting for him once, I've read the first chapter, and if you slipped on a banana peel, I'd be really upset. I mean, God, Phil, are you okay? Or did you get hurt? I mean, what?
Right.
Why is that funny when Oliver Hardy does it? Big fat guy hits the ground, they go bonk, you know? Right. And Freud talks about that. Where's the connection that makes that funny in one instance and a horrible tragedy in the other instance? That kind of plays through all the arts. Why do you like the Archies and not like Otis Redding? You know, what is it? You know, they're both doing music. There's a beat. There's, you know, what is it in art where some of it's just like magic, reaches people?
Mm-hmm.
And that's in a way, that's what you're working on with timing. Although everybody's working on it in the show, the whole team is working on the faith that you can make that connection, you know? And that's what is so fun. And I think I said that in our conversation before. It does not always work. In fact, it generally works less than it doesn't work more than it does work.
Right, but when it does work, that's the magic, right? That's the part. It's like that's the high that everyone's chasing. I imagine is when all of the pieces fall in line, and then even though you've worked on it, you're watching it, and you're invested in the story, even though you already know how to deconstruct it. But if it starts talking to you, you're like, I have something here.
Yeah, exactly.
I wanted to ask you about go off on a different tangent here, and I want to invite the audience, people that are watching live right now. If you have a question for Phil Cummings, go ahead and put it in the comments, and I'll try to get to as many as we can here in just a moment. So I'm going to give everybody a chance to do that. And while I give you guys a chance to do that, I'm going to ask Phil about this book that he has available on Amazon called Sin City High, which I do want to put a little disclaimer on this part of the show and let my audience know that Sin City High is not appropriate for children. I went and looked at a little bit of it, but I do want to know, because it seems like it's a very personal book for you, Phil, and that's, I think, worth talking about. So what can you tell us about Sin City High?
I went to Valley High in Las Vegas, and I was a kind of juvenile delinquent. It was a sort of misbehavior part of my life. And I started out kind of trying to be true to that, but you're writing fiction. I mean, come on.
Right.
You've got to, the story is everything in fiction. I wanted to do an updated version of the Satyricon, of Petronius' 2,000-year-old novel of the wastrels wandering the streets of Rome, getting up to whatever they could get up to. And in that, I just, weirdly enough, I just reread it because I think I wrote it 10 years ago during one of the animation collapses where people that were formerly my bosses were phoning me up saying, do you know it? And I hope that I got, if you're interested in the late 60s, the whole hippie thing, I think that I got that. I used the 60s as the background, and the action takes place. It is a high school dope dealer. One of the things that I used to love was written porn.
Okay.
Going back hundreds of years to the present. And so that's, I mean, that there was, I wanted it to be Tropic of Cancer, Satyricon, those books. And so I went completely crazy. I got completely locked into it, and I don't know, I had fun. So,
What were you channeling R Crum at all, or any of the other major artists of the
Clay
time?
Wilson. I love S. I love R Crum, but it would be like trying to channel Leonardo da Vinci. I think R Crum is one of the icons, one of the greats.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Fritz the Cat made him swear he was going to his grave without ever one other animator ever touching his work, which is heartbreaking to me. That would be if I rubbed the lamp and the genie came up and said, okay, this is it. You won the lottery. What do you want to do? I would want to do first a film of S. Clay Wilson stuff, and then a film of R. Crum stuff. They are two that have transcended their genre.
There's a good documentary about R Crum a few years back.
Oh, Crum, yes. If anybody,
Seriously, it's really worth watching.
It is the best documentary ever made.
Yeah,
The guy who's talking about his sexual attraction to Bugs Bunny in the most serious way.
right. Yeah. You got to get deep into the psychosis of one of the crazy, brilliant minds of the 20th century. That's
Absolutely. I mean, and the fact that his stuff, it's 50 years later, it's still completely relevant. You know?
Someone in the room, by the way, it is still relevant. Yes, someone in the room goes by the name of David Cummings. I'm not sure if he's a relation to you.
Yeah, I think he might be my brother.
Okay. He says, good question for the search of true AI. Why is slipping on a banana only sometimes funny? Will AI ever get it? I don't know if that's if he's.
I just had a huge problem with AI.
The movie, or just as a concept?
No, the bots on Facebook. There was somebody posted a video of a cat grabbing the braid on a woman's hair.
Okay.
And I wrote, it was a piebald cat, a black and white cat. And I've always thought of black and white cats as being like real crazy, real violent. And so I wrote, black and whites are insane maniacs. And I got flagged on that. They said that's a racist comment. It's hate speech, right? So I answered it. I said, look at the video and see what I was commenting on, right? And they not only didn't do that, because you're not talking to people.
No.
They not only didn't do that, they went back and said, a couple of years ago, I had said that white people were stupid and smelled bad. They pulled that out of context, and I totally can't remember what I said that about. But it was not hate speech. I don't hate white people, and I don't think that black and white cats. I don't have there's no rage there, right? But because I wasn't dealing with people, I couldn't say, look at my profile picture.
Right.
Am I really going to be like hating on people? And look at the video that came with the cat.
Context is key. Everyone, context is key.
You know, AI has no ability for abstract thought, right?
Right.
Falling on the sidewalk and Oliver Hardy falling on the sidewalk is human falling on the sidewalk.
Right.
You know, the fact that you got hurt and it's real hurt is the bot doesn't know that.
They're very true.
You know?
And hopefully they won't enjoy watching us fall and get hurt too much, because maybe they'll delight in that a little too much at some point. I hope they don't.
There's no delight there. I mean, that's the weird thing about censorship. If you could, you know, I mean, even the most crazed censor, I could have said, look, I'm talking about a cat, right?
Right.
Check it out. Go look at the post.
Yeah.
And they would have either said, like, screw you,
Yeah.
don't talk that way about cats. But it was a bot. It didn't have any way of making a judgment.
Right.
And that's AI is the danger. I mean, whoever wins this craziness that we're in is going to have more than the capability of 1984, which I'm glad I'm old.
Well, on that somber note, we are out of time for questions, but I do want to remind everybody
So the only one's my brother. He was the only one watching. Okay.
No, he wasn't even watching. We're out of time for more questions. But I do want to remind everybody that if you want to check out Phil's book, you can go to Amazon and look for Sin City High. You can also go to Phil's website, which I might need a reminder on the.
It's Phil Cummings Art, all one word, all lowercase, philcummingsart.com.
philcummingsart.com. Excellent. Phil, thank you for coming onto the show.
And I remembered your name.
It's not that difficult when we have the same one, as it turns out.
Okay.
Well, really, this is really enlightening. Thank you for teaching us all about this. I assume very little known about department.
Even our bosses don't know in most cases.
What they don't know could hurt them, though.
Well, it does. Every so often they try to get rid of timing and they get 1,000 retakes and they're sorry.
See, there you go. You are a vital cog in the industry, and we're glad to have you. And thank you once again for being here.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Right.
All
righty, guys. Well, thank you so much to everyone here. For watching the show. Thanks again for coming for being here. Thank you also to all of the state teachers out there. Their support continuing to make it possible for me to do what I do as an independent creator. So if you visit patreon.com/Phil Martin, you can learn more about the various rewards here, and you can even sign up today for free. Every bit of support helps across the system. While you're at it, please check out my original comic books at philmartin.com, and be sure to say hi to me here on Facebook. You can also say hi to me on Instagram and Twitter. Just my name. Once again, be sure to join the amazing Stay Tuned community right here on Facebook. There's free daily news from the world of animation, and of course, lots of interaction with like-minded folks such as yourselves. Get involved at facebook.com/groups/Stay-Tuners. Anyway, I've been Phil Rocky. It's been a wonderful audience, and until next week, keep those eyeballs peeled, those ears open, and be sure to stay tuned.